Hello everybody, how are we doing today? Okay, so basically this is the third in the series, and they tell you when you're training to be a journalist, and I've just done all the training and so forth, not all the training but enough to do the foundation work and so on, never to rattle paper, never to go like this, so I'm not going to do that, but I am going to hold papers because I quite like the idea of somebody actually reading a paper. And I noticed that on the BBC ones, when they do the papers, they never actually pick up the paper. They're always looking down at the paper, but I think that's disingenuous. I think the way you actually read a paper is you hold it up a bit like this. Okay, so basically what I've done is on this anti-corruption and bribery series, I've looked at two pieces in the Dominion Post, very good pieces actually. First of all, I went out on my own and then I looked at these two pieces. And so we've got a situation where I objected to payment to a Saudi Arabian businessman of $10 million, and then there's been the follow-up from a couple of professors, good follow-ups too, first of all by Lisa Marriott, who is a specialist in law at Victoria University, and she's talking about two things. One is the Income Tax Act of 2007, which allows for small facilitation payments which ensure and expedite results. And she's quite rightly talking about this as something that needs to be repealed. So going back to the video before last on this, I dealt extensively with Lisa's work, which is very good. But I do want to make that point that she was basically talking about the Income Tax Act of 2007 and the need for repeal of that act. Now then, if we look at the second article that I dealt with, or tried to review, this was a good article again by Professor Michael Macaulay, Associate Professor Michael Macaulay, who's in the Governance and Policy Studies area, also at Victoria University. And this is good because it is looking at the need for us to be in line with United Nations and their idea on the UNCAC policy, which is up for approval by our government, and we now need to approve that, and I fully support that as well. So we have a rolling ball here, which is looking at this type of legislation that's on the books, the 2007 Income Tax Act, which actually allows us, I mean, I find that Lisa's article very, very good because it really is stupefying to think that we in New Zealand have a law which actually endorses, if you like, corruption. I mean, that is astonishing. And then there is the work by Michael Macaulay, which I want to talk about again from another perspective today, and that is obviously to bring us into line with the United Nations policy on corruption and so forth. Now, to some extent, that can be perceived as a kind of rhetorical position advanced by the United Nations. I want to make the point today that actually I think it goes a lot further than that. I think that if you look, for example, at China, with its tiger and lies policy, tiger and flies policy, from, I mean, it's all about lies, but the actual policy is called Tigers and Flies. From 2012, they've really made an effort in China to try and clean up the corruption, bribery, and that type of thing in that country. And it is a genuine effort. And I think there's a whole lot of things that we do from the West when we look at China, and we're always suspicious of things that are going on there, I guess, because of our media and also because of other things. But I believe, looking at it pretty thoroughly, that they are making an effort in China to try and deal with corruption. Similarly, in the place that's most often cited for corruption, Nigeria, there is a major effort being made right now to clean up corruption. In fact, the whole election that the current Prime Minister has just gone through has been all about, that the current government, the current President has just gone through, is all about anti-corruption. And so I think that we're in a world situation here And I go back to a very, very good point made by Michael Macaulay, which is that we're talking about crimes committed outside of the country. Now, if you look at the idea of bribery as a crime, that is something that the United Nations is actually calling for people to admit that bribery is a crime. And the fact that our Income Tax Act of 2007 comes out and says that we are entitled to claim for small facilitation payments that ensure or expedite a result is really ridiculous. And the fact too that this is padded so that a $10 million payment to a Saudi person is classified as a small facilitation payment. I've already gone on about that, so I'm not going to do that again. But we're seeing a situation where the law in this country is actually being twisted and abused, I believe. And I think there's a massive need for a clean-up of the actual law itself. The point being, though, that the law itself is actually being extended, twisted, abused, whatever word you want to use, to the point where this is becoming ridiculous. And we really have to do something about this. I think also of the kind of pose, I guess, that we take in the world here in New Zealand, where we try and be clean and green and to some extent beyond reproach in ethical matters. And I also think of the kind of approaches, and I don't want to go into any specifics, but the approaches that we're making at the United Nations for seats here and seats there on this committee or that committee. And I just don't think that this is a good look. I think we've really got to do something about it. And furthermore, I think that coming back to this idea of legislation here in New Zealand that allows us to commit crimes elsewhere, this is outrageous. You're with Peter Cleave.